the latest of those. Always nice to talk to longtime, dare I say legendary, without hesitation, Shreveport sportscaster Darrell Rebouche. Hey, Mr. Darrell, welcome back to Keel. How you doing, amigo?
Robert and Aaron, a great pleasure to be on the air with you. I'm doing okay. It's a sad day, of course.
Bob Griffin, an icon. I can't even think of enough words. You worked with him for many years. You were a competitor against him. Your best memories of Bob Griffin, I guess, is the way we got to start.
All right, it's interesting because I heard you say that this morning. I heard you say we were competitors. And while that's true, we did compete for 20 years until you said it on the air this morning. That word never crossed my mind. He gave me my first job in broadcasting in 1978. He hired me at KSLA to be his assistant, his second, and actually set the course of my entire adult life. You think about it. I mean, I was right out of high school. He gave me a job in broadcasting, and that's it. That's what I did. That's what I have done for the rest of my life in some form or fashion. What I even do today, I use the skills that Griffin literally taught me. I didn't know how to work a TV camera. He taught me how to turn it on. He taught me how to point it. He taught me how to shoot. He taught me how to write. He taught me how to be a TV anchor. He taught me all of that. But it's not about me. It's just because I say that just to say that he did that kind of thing for so many people. Last night I was watching the tributes on the air for the local television stations, and to have a sportscaster, a young sportscaster in his 20s or 30s, talking about what an impact this man who was 85 years old had on his life and his career a generation or a generation and a half after he did it for guys like me.
Did he ever tell you his Vince Lombardi story?
Yeah, I know that. Trust me, Aaron, I've heard all of those stories.
Share that story for people who don't know.
So he crossed paths with Vince Lombardi, and Vince Lombardi was the legendary coach of the Green Bay Packers, and he was Griffin, of course, had a camera, and being a young TV guy, he wanted to get an interview with Vince Lombardi, and he said, Coach, can I get a few words with you? And Lombardi just blew him off. No, just like that. No. And then Griffin said, okay, well, thanks. Have a nice day. Or thanks anyway. Have a nice day. And he said Lombardi just stopped in his tracks. And he said, and so then he turned on him, and Griffin said, oh gosh, why is he turning on him? And Lombardi said, what did you say? He said, I said, well, thanks anyway. Have a good day. And Lombardi said, this is the first time anybody's ever thanked me for not doing what they asked me to do. What do you need, young man? And he interviewed him for 15 minutes, which is awesome. So that's one of thousands of stories. Griffin, obviously for somebody who's had a life well lived, it was quite a raconteur to tell all of these war stories. But Aaron and Robert, I want to say one thing. I think it's important, and I mean this as a tribute. Griffin, in the second half of his life, became a Christian, and I know it's important to this community to know that. He became a Christian. He had a relationship with Jesus. He was very comfortable with his Christianity. He was a subtle evangelist. He evangelized by living his life well. But that was a change, and he was known as a sports anchor, and while he anchored the sports, he also anchored the party back in the day, all right? If you wanted to have a good time,
would Darrell Rebouche have partaken of those parties?
I was a little bit young for his prime, but I did benefit from his ability. If there was a bar owner, a restaurant owner, a chef, a waitress, a dancer in this town, he knew them. And if you wanted to have a good time and you knew Griffin, one phone call, you were having a good time. That's just it. I mean, the headquarters for the longest time was a bar on Travis Street, which is now, free ad, I guess, the Stray Cat. But at the time, it was called the Thomas House. The Thomas House. And the Thomas House was headquarters for the Griffin party, not from the beginning, but for a really long time. If you remember, he came to town. He was headquartered downtown at the Washington and Erie Hotel, so he knew downtown. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, somebody on Twitter, of the thousands and thousands of tributes this morning, somebody put another stool at the Thomas House is now empty, which is so true, because that's part of Griffin's legacy, was his ability, his willingness, his enthusiasm for the party, right? Yeah. But you think about it, he was the king of the night. He worked nights, so he would get off work at 10:30 or 11 o'clock, and then that's when the party started. And but again, later in life, he met his wife Denise, and his lifestyle changed dramatically. And that's another thing. He modeled so many things for us, and one of the things he modeled for us was change and redemption. And if you've maybe sowed some wild oats or been a little bit wild in your youth, and you can find a new way to approach life and to approach relationships, and he did it.
It's interesting because there's a lot of, what I mean by the term kids around here, and they don't know about Bob Griffin. And I'm sure you do too, to some degree, feel it is your duty to inform them of that legendary fellow. If you were to tell somebody, if somebody said in about a minute to 90 seconds, that's the time we got left. If somebody said to you, Darrell, man, you knew this Bob Griffin guy, right? You said, yeah, I knew him pretty damn well. What would you tell somebody who never knew anything about Bob Griffin other than sort of that iconic status?
He was the hardest working man you'll ever meet. He was never satisfied with what he had. He was very satisfied to live and love in Shreveport, but he was always expanding his role. He was known as a television anchor. He started as a booth announcer, if that means anything to old broadcasters, and he never intended to be a sportscaster, but he was hired to be the announcer at KSLA and was given an opportunity to do sports and build an entire life and career around it. He became a writer for the Shreveport Journal, the afternoon newspaper, a writer. He continued to write until his final days. He was a radio broadcaster. He and I used to share a time slot on this radio station. He was syndicated. He would do travel pieces, and he was syndicated across Texas, across the country, internationally. He traveled well. He lived well. He loved hard. He lived hard. He partied hard, and ultimately, he loved the Lord very hard. And this is the guy he was. He lived a full, abundant, amazing, enriching life, and he touched so many people. The word I use to describe how he's impacted my life is immeasurable, indescribable, unquantifiable. But he did it for so many people. The tributes on social media alone only scratch the surface of the impact this man had in his 85 years in life and his more than 60 years in Shreveport Bossier.